Hello, everyone. I'm Loren Duffey, and this is the Global Healing Hub. I wanted to announce that we are collaborating with 4M TV USA. It's a TV initiative from North America focused on mental health. 4M stands for mental health, migration, multi-language, culture, and mindfulness. They're practicing mindfulness beyond borders. The Global Healing Hub is very much in alignment with this mission as well. So it's really fantastic to be in support of each other. On this channel, the Global Healing Hub, we interview healers, practitioners, and medical professionals from across the globe, talking about non-traditional healing methods and how they can help you and the people that you care about. In other words, I talk to mystics, mediums, intuitives, nurses, doctors, therapists, shamans, all discussing and practicing holistic, alternative, and complementary methods for healing. These people and these healing modalities can open you up to some real change. They're the real deal. And you can connect with them for a private, one-on-one, remote, or in-person session through the Global Healing Hub website. And we also have wellness products, blogs, podcasts, links, channels, and even workshops. I really hope you will join this growing community and explore your world of empowerment, freedom, and a greater well-being during this global movement. Today we have with us Bill Sanda. He has an engineer's mind and has had a successful career in politics and is a lobbyist. Simultaneously, he had maintained studies in spirituality and healing practices, which I found pretty interesting. We talk about his work called Healing Through Akashic Records, where he uses English language, humming, toning, and light language to transmit the energies of the Akash to his clients. Also, I had the privilege to have a session with Bill, and it was physically intense. And the benefits so far have had lasting, significant change that I'm truly grateful for. I talk a little bit about that, of course, in this discussion as well. And at the end, Bill leads us through a Akashic Records meditation. So please stick around. It's a great discussion. Really hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. Thank you. Take care.
So the Akashic Records, you might say, is an energetic memory or record of all your thoughts, actions, behaviors, patterns, feelings, judgments, opinions, and so on, of every time you've incarnated. And that incarnation is not only on Earth, but elsewhere. You know, a lot of times, a lot of us have been elsewhere also throughout the universe. So we can tap into this field of energy that we now label as the Akashic Records to use for what we might call healing or clearing purposes. And any person who is a practitioner in the healing arts or whatever, that the whole aim is to allow the individual to recognize and become more aware of who they truly are. The biggest issues that I find, if not the biggest issue that I found over the more than decade I've been working with thousands of people, is self-love. Most people don't love themselves, you know, and they live in their judgments and their opinions of themselves and not self-love. You know, and that is the biggest issue that I find that I work with individuals and myself, you know, day to day, is self-love. All we're doing is to help an individual really become aware of their true self. Again, I go back to that, and the self-love that we are. The universe is love and compassion. And that's why these energies come in to assist us to be our loving, conscious, beautiful selves. When it comes down to it, I'm working with your subconscious patterns to help you identify those patterns, to help you move those energies into your loving light, so you become more of a true self, loving self that you are.
I understand you have a background in engineering and also in some science as well. And I guess what that kind of poses the question, everything that you're doing right now, I feel like at times your analytical mind would be challenged by some of the metaphysical processes that you're working with and helping people out with. So I wanted to get an idea of, how you got into this and how you navigate all of that?
It's always an interesting question. And sometimes I ask that same question myself. It's actually been a interesting balancing act that hasn't really been in conflict. I find it really interesting. Yeah, my background's engineering, degree in metallurgical engineering, the study of metals and so on, from Carnegie Mellon University. Worked in the nuclear power industry, but that didn't really last real long. And how I got into all this engineering and science, though, was from a 6th grade teacher. And that was the first male teacher I had, and the first male that I could really identify with. I had a hard time with my father, let's put it that way. Okay. And coming out of World War II, where he was in the European theater, and my parents got married, and then they had me, and then my brothers 4 years later. But he was always fairly remote. But the 6th grade teacher, Mr. Switkin, really turned me on to science and math, and I really identified with him. I felt like I could talk to him and communicate with him. So that got me interested in science. And that went all through high school, and then obviously college and graduate school and business and working in the nuclear industry. However, interestingly, when I was 11 years old, growing up outside of Chicago, I had an epiphany. And I had no religious background whatsoever. My parents could care less about religion, organized religion, never went to church, never read the Bible, never went to Sunday school. I'm walking back from baseball practice, and all of a sudden I hear this voice say, God does not live outside of you. God lives within you. You are God. Whoa, 11 years of age. Where did that come from? Okay. The funny thing was, I wasn't freaked out by it. I said, oh, okay. And then it said, God is not a male figure with a long white beard, a long white robe, casting hell, damnation, and thunderbolts. It was like a second, whoa, what's this all about? Again, I wasn't really freaked out by it. I went home, told my parents, and all they could say was, oh, this kid's weird. And that was about it. That was accepted. So I had no context to hold that in. So it was like my higher self was telling me at age 11, kind of prepping me for this whole notion of, God does not live outside of you. There is not a God or in heaven and things like that, but you are God. You're a part of God. I call it a godlet, that we're all part of God. We're all from whatever you want to call God is. So okay. I had my first experience at 11, but also got involved in more of the left brain side with science and engineering through college. And I didn't really get involved in the more spiritual side until my 30s. However, I did realize after a couple of years in the nuclear power industry, that wasn't my calling. And I went in all odd things. I went into the Peace Corps. And much to the chagrin of my parents and uncle, who didn't talk to me for years because he was so angry that I would give up my degrees to go to the Peace Corps. Right. And I was in Botswana, Africa, and I loved it. It was a great experience being with a whole different culture. Whole different way of thinking, it was a brand new country. Botswana is right above South Africa. And when I was there, it was a fairly new country that had its own president, had a parliament, kind of combination of the British Commonwealth and the American system. And they were run by chiefs, and the chiefs ran the show. So that was a real eye-opener for me. Came back, got involved in politics, stayed in Washington, D.C., and worked in the Congress, in the Senate, and a subcommittee. For a good while, eventually became a lobbyist in the area of education and computers and reading and things like that. Formed a lobbying company, eventually ran a food nutrition nonprofit. So that was the one side of me. But at the same time, I was also deeply involved in the more spiritual side. Back starting in the 80s with the S training, Werner Erhard, if people want to remember who he was like the big self-help guru at the time. Sold S training in 1986 to his employees. It became the Forum, Landmark Education. Right. Did work with that, and just as I say, as you are ready, the teacher shows up. So I had different teachers show up in the different realms. I worked with a woman out of San Diego who was called a walk-in. If you ever heard of the term walk-in are individuals who decide that it's time to leave their body and go back into spirit, but they leave their bodies intact. They don't pass on. And another soul enters the body. And there are a number of people around the world who are called walk-ins. And so I met this woman named Ayanda. And that was my first experience of a walk-in. And I actually saw a video when the woman who decided to go into spirit, and she was surrounded by her friends, and it was all videotaped, and you could see this white flash of light emanate from her crown chakra. She slumped over, and then there was another light that came back in, and the body reanimated.
Oh, wow.
So it shows you that, we're, you might say, a lump of meat until we're animated by soul. And whenever that occurs, there's a lot of different ideas about when does a soul enter the fetus.
Right.
Is it at conception? Is it right before birth? Is it during the 9 months? That's all up to conjecture. There's no definite answer about that. But anyway, I saw, in a way, through a video of this woman, in a way, being reborn as another person, another woman with a different soul. And she also opened me up to channeling. It was the first time I saw or experienced channeling. She was channeling a Native American energy. Had never seen that before. That was in the early 90s. Worked with her for a while, and then I started working with what's called flower essences.
Okay.
May have heard of Bach remedies.
Yes.
Dr. Bach, who created the whole flower essence industry back in the 1930s in Germany. And that was with Paralandra essences. Michelle Wright has a big farm outside of Warrenton, Virginia, where she creates her essences, Paralandra essences. Met with her, worked with those essences for a good while, did a lot of transformational breath work and taught breath work, did work with groups and so on. And then in the early 2000s, I met up with a woman named Sharon Hamilton, who is a creator of another form of flower essences called light expression essences. And she and her husband have a farm outside of Woodstock, Virginia, the other Woodstock, not the New York Woodstock. And she's been working with essences for 30 years, and we became friends, a mentor, teacher, and I've been using her essences ever since for kind of like my daily clearing, if you will. Her essences are very, very high vibration. She no longer works with the physical flowers and plants and so on, but works with the energies of them through the divas and nature spirits and so on in the angelic realm. Quite an interesting woman.
Yeah.
So I progressed over time, and then in the meantime, I'm still doing my regular daytime work in Congress, lobbying.
That is so interesting. I mean, did you share with your colleagues, some of the work that you were doing?
No.
You weren't talking to the guys, like lean over, like, hey, I have some essence oils. Would you like to
kind of sniff out that they were interested?
Fair
if
enough,
not, no. Otherwise that gets into a lot of controversy. Oh, you're weird, you're strange, you're woo-woo, you're blah, blah, blah. So I kept that separate unless I felt that they were open to listening to me. So I was pretty careful about that. I was out there, blabbing away about my spiritual adventures and so on, because knowing that, I'm working with senators and congressmen and staff and the White House and all that, you don't want to let on that, maybe you're a little woo. Remember back in the Reagan era, Nancy Reagan worked with an astrologer. Well, that created all kind of havoc for her.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So I saw that and I kept quiet.
These days it is becoming more present, but even 20 years ago or 15 years ago, it probably was fairly present, but it is certainly not something that people spoke of.
No, not at all. So you had to be careful. But there were people I knew in Congress and elsewhere, who were involved in spiritual work. In fact, that's how I met Ayanda, was through a friend of mine who worked in Congress. That was a colleague of mine. So you kind of sniff out the energies. Right. And you got to be cautious and careful where what you do and what you say. Otherwise, you'll be out of there. They're just
right.
I remember if there was a senator,
like that dude's into crystals. Get rid of him.
Yeah, well,
or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, there's a senator named Senator Claiborne Pell from Rhode Island. He was the last of the old money, old patricians. And he got involved in some of that kind of work, and his senatorial colleagues, so they really put him down. And Pell was a really interesting character, but he let on a little bit, maybe too much, about his extracurricular activities in the world of spirit.
Right.
So I really learned from him and from others. Just, be quiet, take care, and do your own work. And you can kind of do both simultaneously. So I never really had a big issue with that. That was never a big problem. And then in 2012, I got an email from a friend of mine about a channel energy called Zar, D-Z-A-R, which in ancient Hebrew means health. You've heard of maybe Cryon, channeled by Lee Carroll, or Abraham by Esther Hicks, all kind of the internationally known channels.
Right.
Zar is another energy sort of like that. And I was just really attracted to that energy. And I just knew, it's called knowing, your inner knowing, your heart energy. You don't need proof that this is the path to go down or whatever. You just know this is appropriate for you. You don't need credentials. You don't need any teaching, any of that stuff. So I knew that I needed to contact them. They live outside of Brisbane, Australia, and they live in the semi-tropics, which is I never heard of before in Australia. But anyway, so they have a 20-acre macadamia nut farm. I got to be friends with them. Zar is a little bit different than like Cryon or Abraham. It's more of a personal energy. Somebody at one time asked Zar, well, what's your distinction between you, Cryon, and Abraham? And so Zar said, if we were a corporation, Abraham would be your finance department, the law of attraction. That was their kind of focus. Cryon is more interested in the energetic technologies. Lee Carroll was a former engineer also. He was an audio engineer. And, Lee's been channeling Cryon since 1989. And when Cryon first entered him, he freaked out. I mean, here's a really left brain guy, and all of a sudden the voice is coming through. But his wife at the time, Jan Tober, was a crystal reader, tarot card reader.
So do you actually feel that when someone or a energy taps in and takes over? Do you consciously feel that, or
it doesn't take over me? Now it's different than Cryon or Abraham.
Okay.
Or even with Zar, because all those, Gary is the channel for Zar, their consciousness steps aside, and then that energy kind of takes over the body.
So that is different than channeling. What occurred to this person that you were saying that freaked him out? There's
different ways of channeling. There's no one way.
Okay.
So a channel could be the person like Edgar Casey. He's in a trance medium. Lee Carroll, you might say, is a trance medium, but he's present. I mean, physically present. He's not lying down and not like Edgar Casey might have done or sat with a client. The physical body is present, but the consciousness is now of that collective energy from source.
Okay.
It's not the energy of the individual, Lee Carroll or Esther Hicks or Gary O'Brien, who channels Zar. For me, when I work, I am a channel also, but I'm fully present. I'm fully here, and I'm not channeling an energy or entity, which is a big distinction to make. Okay, I'm channeling the energy of the individual in what we call their Akashic records or Akashic field. That's a big difference. So it's not Cryon's a collective of energies, Abraham's a collective of energies, Zar's a collective of energies from source, compassion energies from source. I'm not doing that. Other people will channel the energy called Jesus or Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary or so on. Or they may channel energies from the Pleiadians or the Arcturians or Syrians and so on. I don't do that. Okay, so this is a big distinction to make when you're channeling. There's different ways to channel, different forms of channeling. Are you fully present? Are you in a trance? Big difference.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's kind of how I led up to this, and how I got involved with what we call the Akashic Records was back in, roughly 2009, 2010. I was living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the home of Thomas Jefferson, University of Virginia. And I was working there. And a friend of mine named Joanne was a longtime member of the Edgar Casey Foundation and started bringing in speakers from Virginia Beach. And as you may know, that they have a big publishing company. And on the table that she had a lot of different of the Edgar Casey books was a book called Edgar Casey on the Akashic Records. Now, Edgar Casey, over his lifetime, did roughly 14,000 healings that were all transcribed by his secretary. 3,000 of those were done in the Akashic Records. So he was a big time Akashic record reader, but again, he was in a trance. And he went through a whole meditative process to access the records and then act as an interpreter of those energies that he was channeling through meditation for the client. So I'm walking by the table, I see the book, and I had no particular interest in the Akashic records. I'd never had a reading before. And I walk by the table, and the book literally energetically leaps up and smacks me in the head, and I got it, read the book. You know, you go to the
right.
it drops out in front of you or whatever. That happened to me. So I bought the book, I read it that evening, and that's when I realized, again, a knowing that, I'm supposed to read the Akashic records and work with the Akashic records the rest of my life. It was a knowing. So I then learned that I had been doing this many lifetimes, and I'm just the latest incarnation of that, you might say, soul energy. And I just started practicing and working with friends of mine and kind of like relearning how to access the records, and worked with a couple of different individuals who teach people how to access the records. But it turned out that I had to learn how to do it my way, not their way. So what I do with the records is individual to me, and there is no one way or right way or wrong way to access the records. So that's kind of like my history of getting involved in all this.
So to access or to channel, do you just put yourself into like almost a meditative state? Like what are some of the sensations you feel? How do you kind of prep for that process?
I don't. Okay, that's where I'm unusual in that sense. Okay. A lot of other people go into a meditative state. They have their own process of working with meditations or chants or whatever to access whatever energies they're working with. For whatever reason, I don't. I don't need to do a prayer. And to access the records, there's a lot of different ways of doing that. You can do it through a shamanic journey, through meditation, through Reiki work, so on and so forth. Okay. What I learned with me is that I can just connect with, you might say, the higher self of the individual I'm working with or the group that I'm involved with. And collectively, we access what we call the Akashic records. So let me step back a minute and explain what my interpretation of the records are.
That would be great. Yeah.
As we're now talking about the Akashic records, what is this thing that we label or we call the Akashic records? To me, it's just the energy field of the universe, the quantum field of the universe. Some would call it the ethers, quantum field, dark matter, dark energy. There are a lot of different labels to this all-pervasive energy throughout the universe. And all practitioners of any modality, we all access the same energy field. We just do it differently based on our own frequency. Energy reflects energy. So my energy is reflective of what we label as the Akash. Others, we call it Reiki or whatever they're dealing with. There is no like a location of the Akash. It's not like you go 500 light years, make a right-hand turn, and there's Reiki. If you make a left-hand turn, there's Akash. No, it's just the field of energy. Some would say
it's all the same.
Yeah, it's to me, and from what I've seen and what I've learned, talking to a lot of other practitioners throughout my time doing this, we've all come to pretty much the same feeling that, we all access this field of energy. Some would call it the realms of creation, some, like I said, the ethers or whatever you want to call that. Mm-hmm. Czar calls it the realms of creation, and there's different aspects of that energy. One aspect being what we call the Akash, or all that knowledge. So the Akashic records, you might say, is an energetic memory or record of all your thoughts, actions, behaviors, patterns, feelings, judgments, opinions, and so on, of every time you've incarnated. And that incarnation is not only on Earth, but elsewhere. A lot of times, a lot of us have been elsewhere also throughout the universe. So we can tap into this field of energy that we now label as the Akashic records to use for what we might call healing or clearing purposes. Your past, and let me see, who you are in the present is a reflection of who you've been all the lifetimes that you've incarnated, along with your astrology and so on. They're all useful tools. Astrology is a useful tool. And I happen to focus with the Akash. Okay. The term or the label Akashic records was derived from a woman named Madame Blavatsky in the late 1800s. She was a Russian philosopher, scientist, writer, And she wrote voluminously about the interaction between Eastern and Western religions and so on. All her work she downloaded, what she called or labeled as the Akashic records. In Sanskrit, Akash means primary source, primary field, primary substance. So Akash or Akashic records would be primary field of energy that we all tap into. Okay, that's just an old ancient term. And the ancients knew about this energy. They called it tree of knowledge, tree of life, book of knowledge, book of life. You can find references of that in the Bible, the Quran, the Kabbalah. You can find it in ancient hieroglyphics of the Mayans, of the Sumerians, of the Egyptians, and so on. So that energy has been known throughout recorded human history. The only thing is that up until recently, it was only the purview of your psychics, your shamans, your oracles, priests and priestesses, who had a higher level of consciousness than the average human being, were able to access what we call now the Akashic records.
Okay.
The oracles and so on. Nowadays, say after World War II, we've enhanced our level of consciousness so anybody can access their records with proper teaching and training. Anybody can do it if they so desire. It just takes practice, just like anything
So
else.
why was that kind of a benchmark after World War II?
The atomic bomb.
Okay.
The atomic bomb, according to Tsar, signaled to the universe that, oh, human beings can destroy themselves. And that started bringing in these collectives of energies that we now label as the Tsar and so on, all these.
So these energies came in, they're like, oh, we better do something.
Yes. Yeah, we need to help these people. They're going to self-destruct. They're an experiment throughout the universe. Not a good idea if they self-destruct. Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
atomic bomb, bad. These energies, good. They came in and basically started educating us and helped to speed up the enlightenment or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So that's why you find so many people channeling nowadays.
Okay.
Channeling Jesus and Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and the Palladians and the Sumerians and so on. Okay. Or the Akashic records or Reiki or whatever. You find more and more people are tapping into these energies. As we learn, as we grow, and if you look at the kids being born nowadays, it's pretty amazing, their levels of consciousness that are coming out. It's not just like old times in the past, you had a genius like a Mozart or a Beethoven, but once in a blue moon, maybe once in a generation, once in 100 years. Nowadays, you're finding this happening with immense frequency. That more and more of these babies coming in are coming in at a much higher level of consciousness than we've ever had in the past.
Right.
That's what gives you hope that we aren't going to self-destruct. Right. These kids are going to grow up and take over, and they're going to be a hell of a lot more aware than we've been.
Yes.
You know, and that awareness is increasing. So the awareness of your heart energy, you see all these different trainings and workshops and modalities out there, you know, like the landmark education and so on. Mm-hmm. You know, that are bringing forth a new level, a higher level of consciousness.
And I believe probably through Zoom and just our communication, technological communication has allowed for more comfortable verbalization of these practices, these maybe some would say unusual practices, but because they're being expressed on a more regular basis across the globe. They're starting to become a little bit more mainstream and more widely accepted in a much faster way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah. Yeah. It is becoming more acceptable. You'll see it more and more in mainstream literature, journalism, things like that, you know.
Yes.
Which, you know, the question then, well, look at what's happening around the world, you know, wars in all over the place, you know, and all the shootings and killings and, you know, the destructive climate change, and, you know, like Australia has had horrible fires and now floods in Eastern Australia. Our West is experiencing hyper drought. Then you get the warfare, you know, in Eastern Europe, and it goes on and on and on. But that's the news that you see.
Right.
News, you know, so fear sells.
Yes.
You know, and what I see underneath all that is enormous shifts and changes in humans. the human spirit, heart energy, consciousness, and so on. I mean, there's more and more people waking up that, oh, something's really missing here. You know, something's not right. And you'll find more and more people that are getting involved in these kind of activities. Yes. And more people getting, you know, involved in the workshops and growing and learning and just recognizing that, hey, we've got to wake up. There's something not working here, something not happening that is in our best interest. So you're seeing an awakening happening. Like I mentioned, with the kids coming in nowadays being birthed at a much higher level of consciousness than we've ever seen in the past. And, you know, it's a really, to me, really satisfying and hopeful energy. And I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the news. I kind of follow it. I mean, I used to read 4 or 5 newspapers a day when I was working on the Hill. And now I don't read any. I just kind of look at the news. And what's happening with me is that it's, you know, that the Buddhists say that we live in a dream. Okay. And what that means, if you look at it from a psychological point of view, you've heard the term subconscious energy versus conscious energy. Mm-hmm. And what science has found is that we only use about 5 to 10% of our creative capacity, conscious capacity of energies. The rest of 95% is what we call the subconscious energies. Those are patterns and beliefs and thoughts and judgments and opinions that we carry lifetime after lifetime after lifetime.
Right.
You know, and so what we're doing, and what myself with the Akashic Records and many others are doing, are, I call myself a collaborator, not a healer. I don't heal anything, but I collaborate with the individual and collaborate with them to help them identify subconscious patterns that are preventing them from being who they truly are. Now, there's an interesting story that's actually true. That there was a monastery in Thailand, this was maybe 100 years ago or so or more, that had this beautiful golden Buddha statue, absolutely gorgeous, made out of gold. However, they were under threat from the neighbors in what back then was Burma, and that these neighbors were in war, and they thought that they would come and pilfer the Buddha, kill the monks, and so on. So what they did was that they plastered this golden Buddha in a really thick, like a foot thick of plaster, painted it. So it looked like a typical average Buddha. Wasn't, you know, this gold was no longer visible. So it survived. And roughly, and I think it was in the 50s, they were going to move this Buddha, this plaster, what they thought was a plaster Buddha, but they had to use kind of a forklift. And when they lifted it, it started cracking. The plaster started cracking. And that's when one of the monks discovered that, oh my God, you know, there's this golden Buddha underneath. So they were able to chip away the plaster to reveal this golden Buddha. Well, I use that as a metaphor for being human. All human beings are this golden Buddha. We all are, everybody. I don't care how evil they might be, you know, and so on, or however you want to label people. We're all the golden Buddha, but we have this thick layer of plaster over us. And so what I see for myself working with the Akashic is to help you chip away that plaster. So more and more and more of that golden Buddha shows up. That to me is a critical point right there. What anybody and any person who is a practitioner in the healing arts or whatever, that the whole aim is to allow the individual to recognize and become more aware of who they truly are. That we have all these subconscious patterns, we're driven by our subconscious patterns. And these patterns, you know, typical example would be you get married, things don't work out, you get a divorce, but then you marry the same personality, but a different body.
Right.
Oops, what was I thinking? And I hear that all the time. What was I thinking? Well, that's old patterns, you know, that we carry lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Or you're afraid of flying. Well, why are you afraid of flying? Well, that's past life stuff also. So we're governed, you know, and unknowingly or unaware that we're so governed by our past life judgments and opinions and thoughts and fears and behaviors and patterns, you know, that we're almost like, you know, the movie The Matrix, we're the Matrix in a way.
Gotcha.
You know? And we really don't have a lot of free will. What we think of as free will is we would hope would be that 5%, but typically it's your subconscious patterns that show up and what we call free will. So it's to expand your ability to really access your free will, to access that golden Buddha deep within we call the true self, as opposed to your taught self, subconscious patterns, however you want to label that. And to me, anybody who's working as a practitioner, that's your really goal with an individual that you're working with yourself first. And any practitioner is working with themselves first, period. It's about them. So I know that, when I'm working with somebody, this is really about me learning about me, and then it's about them, whoever, whether it's individual or group or whatever the case might be. And it's a fascinating process. Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to some of the work that you do. So I experienced what you do a couple weekends ago at an open house. It was just a quick little snippet, and it was a 15-minute session. And I mean, I felt the energies moving around in a very, very physical way for the full 15 minutes. And then, of course, when we were done, I was grabbing on the countertop, grabbed onto the door, the framing of the door, and kind of hung out in the hallway. Meanwhile, kind of leaning up against the wall. I mean, I was kicked on my butt. It was really a potent session. And so let me back up a little bit more. So during that session, what I found was very interesting is the way you go about kind of passing the information along. I guess it's a type of sound therapy. You actually do it in a form of a language, light language, and interspersed in there is some English. So you have kind of a sense of what you're working through with a lot of unusual vowels and sounds kind of surrounding it.
Right.
So it was a very unusual session. I mean, in my opinion, so much of this energy work is very unusual, and it's still very strange to me, although I've been down this rabbit hole for now 10 years. But because none of this was part of my belief system, and I'm still so heavily ingrained in a lot of the stuff is not possible, that even though I'm knee deep in all of it now, it's still unbelievable to me. So, I'm sitting there face to face with you, and you have all these strange sounds coming out of your mouth, and some English messages that I understand. And meanwhile, experiencing this very physical, like internal motion. And again, I would not have been able to drive after that session if I wanted to. I was really I was dazed and confused. I mean, it was, and to me, that indicates that something was really taking place. I mean, so, I'll tell you that about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks have gone by, maybe 2.5 weeks or so. And I am in a very, very good place right now that whatever occurred that weekend lifted just a bunch of weight. And so thank you for that very much. But even if this shift that didn't occur to me, the very fact that the physical experience that was taking place without touch, I mean, it's eye-opening to me. It's just so very interesting and intriguing. And I'm totally and completely fascinated by so many of these things. And when something hits me as profound as your work, I mean, it just makes me want to just dive even deeper and explore even more, because, I know that even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I'm just scratching the surface. And that's kind of part of what I'm doing. What I'm doing is because I do feel like I'm scratching the surface, and I want to present as much as I can to other people. And I think it's very cool that you're very much left brain and right brained. And, if I saw you on the street, I would not say, hey, this dude's into oils or, crystals or woo-woo or any of that thing. And yet, again, what you do is very potent. But yeah, so I had actually had breakfast with my parents this morning. I was just telling them, that I just feel good for like the last couple of weeks. I truly feel amazing. And once again, thank you. That's yeah. So
I don't wear a Dumbledore outfit.
yeah, no, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Although I've threatened to do that sometime. Yeah, some point in time I probably will. But that is in a closed space, not one out in the open.
Gotcha. But no,
Yeah.
so something we haven't spoken of yet is the fact that you do, I guess, transmit or use light language as a tool when you access the Akashic records.
Mm-hmm.
How did it, when you tapped in, have you always, has that always occurred? Like when you tapped into Akashic records, did you then start speaking in this particular language, or is that something that you developed, or, why is that the way it is?
So that evolved over time. When I
Okay.
first started working with the Akash, it was mostly speaking in English, and there was what you might call vocal tonations, vocal toning
Okay.
that went on, or some would call it humming. And what we're doing really is what's people really need to realize. It's not the words that I'm saying or what anybody else is saying. It's the frequency behind the words. What we're doing, we're having a frequency conversation. What you experienced energetically was a frequency conversation that impacted you, your DNA, every cell of your body, however you want to, talk about that. And one thing I do want to mention is that our DNA is mostly quantum energy. Back in the 90s, when the scientists, geneticists were doing the Genome Project, mapping out the entire gene structure of humans, they found that our DNA was only roughly 5 to 10% acting as a physical entity. In other words, sending chemical codes to our genes. The other 95, 90%, they had no idea. It felt like it was inert, not doing anything. The Russians, interestingly, asked much broader questions and did experiments with lasers and so on, and other people around the world, and discovered over time that, in fact, most of our DNA is quantum energy, that it acts like a computer code, that this 95% of what they call junk DNA, very scientific term because they had no idea what it was for, was actually acting as a very, very sophisticated quantum energy computer code. And that was, in essence, giving information to the hardware part of your DNA, your 5% or so, that was communicating with your genes. And then they began to realize that, there is no junk DNA. It's all complete, but most of it is at an energy level that they really don't have tools or techniques to really observe. Cryon talks about that quite a bit in their channelings with Lee Carroll. And their book 12, I believe it is called The Esoteric Nature of DNA, which really explains the nature of DNA quite significantly. So when we're working with frequency. That frequency can impact your DNA because, again, it's mostly quantum energy. So when I'm working with you, again, it's a frequency conversation, it's toning, it's vibrational tones, and it's speaking English, which itself has its own frequency, the words that I'm saying. Okay. Over time, in fact, this happened when I was working with Czar back in May of 2019. We did some channeling work and some clearing work, and I began to experience working with the earth energy. And Czar calls that the Teo Mekula energy. It's an energy of the earth. So we live within the frequency of the energy of the earth. We don't live on the earth, we live within the earth frequency. So we're a part of the earth, as long as being a part of the universe. So we tap into the earth energy, we tap into the universal energy, and so on. So what I'm doing with light language, that evolved over since May of 2019. Light language is a language of love. It's not understandable on purpose. Some might call it speaking in tongue. You've heard of that in different religions. Very similar. It's a frequency. It's not understandable on purpose. Language can get in our way. My understanding is that karma has like 125 different definitions. What definition of karma are you using? We talked about God creating all these different interpretations, in language. And then you also have misinterpretations from one language to another language. So language gets in our way, thinking gets in our way. So the work that we're doing with frequency bypasses your thinking, your mind, whatever you want to call that. And we're getting down into the heart of you, the heart of who you are, your quantum DNA. And that is being impacted by the frequencies that we're all working with, whether it's Reiki or quantum touch or access consciousness or whatever modality you're working with. We're all dealing with frequency. And we're also speaking. So our mind, our cells kind of have a sense of, oh, okay, we're working with the throat chakra, we're working with the heart chakra. And I tend to work with the chakras because we tend to understand, you have a sense of what that means.
Right.
So if we're working with the throat, you might have a fear of speaking in public. Well, that's an ancient fear from way back when you tried to express your truth, and what happened? You were burnt at the stake, you were stoned, whatever the case might be, out of fear, out of.
So to interject on that really quick, so we did a little work on the throat chakra for me.
Yeah.
And and so our session was on Saturday. My first interview for what it is I'm doing here was on Tuesday, and for the first time in I've been doing this for about two and a half years. For the first time in two and a half years, I was not nervous in front of the camera.
Good.
And every session after that, I just have not been nervous in front of the camera, which allows me to actually speak my voice.
Absolutely.
And it's been so freeing. So anyway, what you said is accurate, and I experienced that. One of a couple things I experienced. So anyway, Go ahead.
So what we're doing, when I work with you, I'm a collaborator with you. As I mentioned a while back, that I collaborate with you, your essence, your higher self, and we together access your Akashic field. I become an interpreter, and I become what we call a channel. But I said I'm fully present, I'm fully here. So as we're working, I'm speaking English, so you have a sense of what's going on. And then at the same time, I'm expressing myself and these energies through what we call the light language, speaking in tongue, and also a vibrational frequency, so like toning or humming. So how I evolve is to use different tools and techniques to express your Akashic field to you in a manner that's having an impact on your physicality, your emotional body, your mental body, your etheric body, your spiritual body, all these energy bodies that comprise you. And it's all being done through frequency. But it's just different ways of, you might say, attacking the issue of the subconscious patterns that we've identified together as a collaborator. I really want to emphasize that we're collaborating on this. This is not me doing something to you. That connotates duality. Then that connotates a separation. I've got a pill for you. Okay, well, that's I'm doing something to you as opposed to in collaboration together. So what we're doing is a collaborative process. There is no separation between you and me. In the field of quantum energy, there is no separation. So I connect with you, you connect with me. We're always connected with all and everybody. We just are not at a place where we generally recognize that. We live in separation right now. Tribalism, nationalism, all these isms. I'm separate from you. I'm better than you. I'm stronger. I'm not as strong. We have all these judgments and opinions. Those are all part of our taught self, our thinking self, our subconscious patterns. So what you see around the world is a massive collective unconsciousness of subconscious patterns interacting with each other. And a lot of times they can be pretty destructive, whether they're individual relationships or working with yourself or communities or countries or whatever. We're just a mass of this subconscious patterns that are interacting all the time. And all that we're doing is to assist individuals and groups to recognize these patterns and then to help you clear them. So what I'm doing is to assist you in moving those energy of those patterns into your loving light, your heart energy. So that is the clearing energy. It's not me clearing it, it's you clearing it. I'm acting as a conduit or whatever you want to call it, channel, interview, or whatever, to assist you to collaborate with you. And I want to really make sure that people understand that. That to me is a moving into the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, whatever people want to say, out of duality, out of separation. That means that we are connected, we're all one. Okay, so that's how I'm operating. And we are that heart energy. We are love, compassion, joy, passion, appreciation, kindness, grace, gratitude, generosity. That's who we truly are. And I keep saying this over and over and over again. We're not our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, our patterns, our judgments, our opinions. We typically will form our sense of self based on the judgments and opinions and and all that, as opposed to recognizing that we are love and joy and compassion and so on. Okay. And that is a real big distinction to make, because we typically want to believe that we're the thinking self, the taught self. That's who we are. We have revenge or betrayal. There is a Dr. Bruce Lipton, PhD cell biologist, who wrote a seminal book called Biology of Belief.
Great book. Yep.
In chapter 7, he talks about the subconscious patterns, and he's one of the first in the mainstream of science to talk about that. And what he says is that between the 3rd trimester of pregnancy and 7 years of age, the fetus, the baby, the child is a sponge for its environment. It's just taking in everything. It's taking in the mother. Is the mother happy, not happy? What kind of nutrition is she taking? Then one thing to remember too, we're almost 60-70% of water. And what we found is that water is an extraordinary presence, or whatever you want to call that. A guy named Dr. Emoto from Japan did many long-term studies of the impact of emotions and feelings and so on,
right,
and the environment on water, and found that if he looks at the ice crystals of polluted water, they're horrible looking. They're deformed, demented, whatever. The ice crystals of water that comes from a pure lake or pure river, or if you speak love, joy, happiness into it, beautiful, beautiful crystals. So you can imagine that all the lifetimes that we've existed, and we started getting on ourselves, blaming ourselves. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not good enough. Goes on and on and on. That impacts us because that's impacting our water. That
was in the movie, What the Bleep Do You Know, right?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. There was like different glasses with different words. Like one glass would say hate, one glass would say love, one glass would say something good, one glass would say something bad. And when looked under the microscope, depending on which glass it happened to be in, it would have a corresponding, jagged, awful shape, or a beautiful, crystal-esque, fantastic shape.
Right. So
that was a neat study.
Yeah. So again, be careful how you speak.
Right.
Are you speaking hate, anger, rage, violence, betrayal, get even, not good enough? Or are you speaking love, joy, self-love? One of the biggest issues that I find, if not the biggest issue that I found over the more than decade I've been working with thousands of people, is self-love. Most people don't love themselves, and they live in their judgments and their opinions of themselves and not self-love. And that is the biggest issue that I find that I work with individuals and myself, day to day, is self-love.
Right.
That we generally just don't love ourselves. We'll get into a relationship after the beautiful when I'm in love with this person, and then all of a sudden reality hits, and that warts, they're a toad, they're not the Prince Charming or Princess Charming or whatever. And then we get into conflicts and our trigger points, and we start interacting with each other, and boom, things blow up. And so all we're doing is to help an individual really become aware of their true self. Again, I go back to that, and the self-love that we are. The universe is love and compassion. And that's why these energies come in to assist us to be our loving, conscious, beautiful selves. Czar says that over and over and over again. I see you, when Czar's speaking through Gary, he says, I see you as who you truly are. I don't see you in your taught self, all your judgments and opinions and all that kind of stuff. And when they work with you, they're working with you to become more and more aware of the beauty that you are. And that's all I do. When it comes down to it, I'm working with your subconscious patterns to help you identify those patterns, to help you move those energies into your loving light, so you become the more of a true self, loving self that you are.
Well, I'd love to give, depending on your time, I'd love to give the people a little sample of what it is you do and the way it sounds. Maybe demonstrate some of the light language through this a short, maybe a 5-minute clearing?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Okay, so thank you, dear one. Oh, hey, hey, jete, hey, wa, ta, ka, te, ta, ma, ta, hey, te, hey, wa, oh, yeah, hey, te, hey, yeah, je me te, ko, wa, ta, ha, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The beauty of you, the beauty of you, the beauty of you all, dear ones. Such beauty, beauty, beauty you truly are. Time to step into your beauty, your power, your strength, dear ones. And for there is much victim, victim, victim energy abound. Victim, 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 victim. I am not this, I am not that. You are stronger than me, I am weaker than you. Over and 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 over again through many, many lifetimes. Giving your power away to another. They have your answers. They have my answers. I am not smart enough, aware enough to know my path, my joy, what I'm here for this planet. Why am I here on this earth? With all this confusion and chaos and seemingly chaos. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? Dear ones, you know the truth. You know the answers within you. Time to empower yourselves to seek within. To empower yourselves to seek within, dear ones. To power yourselves, to release the victim, 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 victim energy. Deep within your heart, deep within your light, your love, dear ones. To expand the playing field, the awareness field, if you will, that you have never experienced before. Time to release, time to release, time to release, dear ones. Those energies that are not serving you, not who you truly are, not serving you, not who you truly are, not serving you, not who you truly are. Breathing, 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 breathing so deeply within, dear one, so deeply within. Time to breathe, time to breathe, time to breathe. Well, breathing, 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 breathing. In whatever manner works for you, through your nose, through your mouth, it matters not. To allow that beautiful breath of life to flow through every cell of your body, your cellular memories. To allow Mother Earth, Mother Nature guide to support you on your journey, on your path, on your way. To allow, dear one, to allow. To open your heart to the earth, to the universal energies of love and compassion from all that is, dear one. For you live within the earth's energy, not just upon her, but within her energy, dear one. You are part of the earth, you are part of the universe. There is no separation. You are the expression of all that is in human form, whether you are female or male or however you identify your gender. It matters not, dear ones, it matters not. For throughout your many, many lifetimes, you have been the expression of all genders. Breathing, 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 breathing so deeply within, so deeply within, so deeply within, dear ones. Time to breathe, time to breathe, time to breathe so deeply within. Breathing, 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 breathing. Time to open your breath, dear one. To allow that beautiful breath of life to flow, to flow, to flow through your chest, your heart, your lungs, into your bloodstream, through every cell of your body, your cellular memories, your cellular membranes, your protoplasm, your nuclei, your chromosomes, your genetic expression, your DNA. Time to allow to breathe, 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 breathe. For there have been so many constrictions in the breath of life, dear one, so many constrictions, and so many anxieties and fears where you have held your breath through many, many lifetimes, including this one. Time to open your breath, time to open your breath, time to open your breath, dear ones. Breathing, 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 breathing. We cannot emphasize enough to allow that beautiful breath of life to flow, 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 in whatever manner you choose, for your choice, dear ones. Time to choose for yourself. Time to open your third eyes, your dear ones. Your pineal gland, what humans call the pineal gland. To open your insight into yourself, your intuitive self, the knowing of who you truly are. Time to allow your knowing, dear ones, your knowings to expand. Not just your thinking, your taught self, your brain, your mind, dear one, but your heart energy. For there are so many constrictions deep within your heart, your heart, your heart, your heart, dear ones. So many energetic constrictions deep within your heart chakra. The fear, the trauma, the pain, the sorrow, the sadness through all the lifetimes you have lived, including this one. Of separation, of abandonment, of pain, sorrow, sadness, dear ones. Again, breathing, 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 dear ones. Such beautiful souls you truly are. So many beautiful beings of light are supporting you, loving you on your journey, on your path, on your way. Time to open your heart to yourself, to love, 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 love you, dear one, to love yourself so fully, so wholly, so completely. So beautiful souls you are. Time to step into your awesomeness, your magnificence, dear one. And we thank you, we bless you on your journey, on your path, on your way, and we are complete. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That was great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So is there anything else that you wanted to share with us before we start to wrap this up?
Oh, I just want to thank all the energies that have come to work with the earth, with us humans, and to thank every human being that are becoming more and more aware, and to take whatever steps you feel necessary to work with whomever works for you. There's no one energy or being or whatever that is the answer. There's many, many, many thousands and millions of answers out there. Again, discernment, trust your heart, open your heart. But really, it's a message of love. It's really time that we love ourselves, and however you go about doing that, to open yourself, whatever works for you. I just bless you and honor you and thank you, Loren. I appreciate your time and effort and what you're doing to spread the word. We need more of that. And thank you, everybody who will be listening to this, and bless you and honor you, and take care.